News. Today we're going to be talking about Baccano. Baccano was made by the studio Brains Base in 2007. It's 13 episodes long, and it's an adventure, comedy, fantasy series.
The setting is 1930s America. Various mafia families are battling each other for territory, while a young lady searches for her lost brother. A massacre occurs on a transcontinental train bound for New York City, and a 200-year-old immortal searches for the recipe behind the elixir of life. Baccano is an intriguing tale that tells these stories among others. It also showcases for a handful of strangers that the ties that bind us may be greater than they originally imagined.
Yeah, so Baccano for me, it's a crazy serial killer and mobster story. It's set in 1930s America, and it has a style and fun that's exploding out of every scene.
Yeah, style is the key word here. Almost everything about this series I just fell in love with. Characters, animation, soundtrack, plot, it's brilliant. You don't get very many series that are this great, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll start with animation, and it's spectacular. I mean, you've got really smooth action scenes and really distinct character designs. What I really liked about them is that they felt like they could be seen in 1930s America, yet they have that very much anime flair to them. I thought it was such a perfect balance, and that each character was very recognizable for what they look like, that I just loved it. I felt that they really did a good job overall in every aspect of the animation in this series.
Yeah, soundtrack is very strong once again. It uses a sort of mixture of jazz and blues music that really brings that 1930s era to life. The opening is just another strong example of Baccano's great sound. It's fun, it's upbeat, and it's highly entertaining. And I just found myself watching it every single time that I started a different episode. I wanted to see that to get into that sort of 1930s Baccano mood.
Alright, so the story in Baccano might seem a bit hard to understand at first if you're just getting into and seeing the first one or two episodes, because they're showing you all sorts of little clips about the sort of spoilers that come in later in the series. But once you get into it, you realize that there's a huge puzzle going on, and you're being shown clips of 3 specific time periods, all sort of going on at the same time as they're sort of pieced together throughout the series. And as you go on, you can sort of figure out how all these different time periods and characters converge.
Yeah, I love the puzzle aspect of the structure. I kind of think of it as the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumi on crack, because with Haruhi it was just the episodes were out of place. This is just multiple stories being played in one episode, and they're kind of mix mash around, and it's a little bit more advanced, but it's a lot more fun for me. And the other good thing is that it's never really that hard to put everything together. It's not complex. You're not gonna have to make out diagrams or anything. It's all there in front of you, and just as you watch, you piece it together, and you know what's going on, and you're like, wow, I solved that mystery. I enjoyed this. What makes this even better is that the quality of these stories are very high. They grip you, they make you wince, they make you laugh, sometimes all at the same time, and it makes for a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, what I found is if you've seen Quentin Tarantino movies like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, it has a lot of the same feel about these weird stories all coming together with just a huge amount of style. And that's what I was sort of getting out of every sort of scene in this series. You're seeing all sorts of insane storylines come together, and I really enjoyed the mystery of all these things. I mean, it wasn't like a true what's going to happen mystery, but you wanted to know why things were happening, what people were doing, and it was just such a fun ride going through each of these different stories. What I also really enjoyed was that there was a very dynamic nature to all the different factions in this series. You have, I'd say, maybe 7 to 8 different distinct groups of people with their own motivations and goals. None of them are the true protagonists, and none of them are really the true antagonists. They all just have their own goals, and so you just have this huge group of people having a sort of war of conflicts of interests. And I really enjoyed seeing that work, because there's no good and evil side, nothing like that. You can just enjoy picking your characters, what you liked, what did you want to see, and seeing it happen in front of you.
Okay, so much like with Baccano's various factions, you can also create this sort of hierarchy of likability with the stories themselves. The highlight story, in my opinion, being the sort of recount of the events aboard the train called the Flying Pussyfoot. For me, I found that the characters featured here were so much more interesting and so much more entertaining than in all the other stories. Now, that being said, this doesn't mean the other stories are bad, they're just not as strong. They're all very, very good. The only story that I found that lacked any sort of punch, though, was the story of E. Gennard searching for her brother Dallas. It just wasn't bad, it just wasn't as strong as the rest of the show as a whole.
Yeah, for me, I did feel like they sometimes went to very odd stories. It was very rare, but sometimes I just felt like they weren't going on the right path for the series. Overall, though, I really enjoyed almost everything they did. I just wish they would have put a little bit more substance behind everything. Because for me, I can't really give 5 stars to series that don't have that bit of substance, that bit of, wow, that made me think of something new or think of something interesting. Because that's what I really need to push that series up to the limit, although this had everything else going for it for me. So, for the ending to Baccano, I think it did a really good job of wrapping up the series. It really tied in almost all the mysteries, all the revelations, all into one great package, and there's huge action scenes and climaxes right at the end too.
I would agree. Okay, so moving on to characters now. So Baccano has a huge cast of characters, and they all have very unique personalities and traits, and it makes all the interactions between all the different characters a pure joy to watch. The grand diversity of these characters also allows for the audience to grab their favorites and follow them through as their role in the grand story unfolds. And I'll say, while the side cast does its job, it is the main cast that really gives Baccano its merits.
Yeah, I mean, there is a ton of characters in this series, so we're just going to talk about a few of our favorites, and the few ones that stood out to us. So one of mine was Jaga Z and his sort of gang and faction that he was with. So they're a gang of mercenaries that are doing their thing, and Jaga Z is their quote-unquote leader, who doesn't really lead them or do anything for them. However, he is the one that they want to protect, and they will protect at all costs. But he wants nothing to do with violence, and is kind of a wimp himself. So this interaction really made for a somewhat comedic and somewhat emotional story that was going on in sort of the background of all the major stories of the series.
Right. So my first character is actually a pair of people, because they're sort of like one cohesive unit, and that is Isaac and Miria. They are a pair of thieves who aren't as bright as the police give them credit for. So they are crack thieves, they get the job done, they've performed countless robberies, but they're not all upstairs. And they sort of they fuel Baccano's comedy. Their antics are hilarious, and they're just purely entertaining every step of the way. Every scene that they were in, I was laughing or just had a big smile on my face, because they do that to you. That's what their characters are like. That's what they bring to the show.
Yeah, another not-so-main character, but a character that had an interesting arc going on while the story was going, was a character named Czeslaw, and he's an oddly unemotional kid that you meet in the early parts of the series. And he has ties with a lot of odd pieces of the story in this already sort of crazy mix going on. After you find out his background, though, you sort of understand why he's here, and it's kind of emotional when you first see it. I was sort of almost brought to tears of how tortured of a person he was. And then when you get to his final revelation, you just feel so much for him. And I really liked that they did this in Baccano. Every character did matter for their final revelations and for what they did. And so this one was, I thought, stood out as one of the characters that really had a strong final revelation.
So the other character that I'm picking is a character named Vlad Russo, and he is a serial killer. And, Baccano's full of serial killers, so why would I pick him? The thing about Vlad is that he is, one, very good at what he does, and two, he never tries to hide the fact that he loves to kill people. There are a lot of scenes where he's dancing in blood, and he wears a white tux in the train. He comes in the train arc. He wears white tuxes on the train so that he wants to see the blood splatter on the white, and he thinks it's going to look beautiful. So that is so... I'm sort of drawn to him. As you guys know, I love the sort of crazy characters, and his overall just demeanor, his mannerisms are very amusing, and he's pure entertainment, just like Isaac and Miria, which is why I love all those characters so much.
Yeah, so I mean, from completely sinister to tortured to naive characters, the cast of Baccano is one of the most diverse, interesting, and memorable ever to be seen in anime. And I think we both can agree on that.
Yeah.
And this is in 13 episodes, so I mean, props to Baccano for that.
Alright, so what are you going to give Baccano?
Baccano gets 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. As I alluded to earlier on, it just doesn't have that substance that I can give it the 5-star rating for, but truly I loved almost every aspect of what it did have to offer.
Alright, so for me, I'm going to give Baccano 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this series. It's my number 5 anime of all time right now, so that sort of hidden is going to get revealed now. It's just pure entertainment. It's great. Fantastic characters, fantastic animation, great storyline. This is an anime that's one that everybody should check out, just because of the fact that it's a wonderful experience.
Alright, so if you have any questions, comments, or requests, you can send them to aniview@hotmail.com or send us a comment on our YouTube page.
You can also get in touch with us through our forums via aniviewreviews.com.
So thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.